You had something to say. You knew exactly what you wanted to say. And by the time you'd worked up the courage to say it, someone else had already said something else. The conversation had moved on, and the moment was gone. So you stayed quiet. Again. And nobody noticed, which somehow made it worse. This is what group conversations actually feel like when you have social anxiety. It's not that you have nothing to contribute. It's not that you're uninterested or disengaged or shy in the simple, uncomplicated way that word gets used. It's that there is a process happening inside you, fast, automatic, completely exhausting, that runs between the moment you have a thought and the moment you would need to speak it. And that process takes longer than the window the conversation gives you. Here's what that process looks like. A topic comes up. Something in you responds to it. You have a thought, a reaction, something genuine to add. And then, before you can open your mouth, the inner dialogue begins. Is this the right moment to speak? Is what I'm about to say actually relevant? What if it doesn't land the way I'm imagining it? What if I say it, and there's a silence after? What if I interrupt someone who is about to say something? What if my voice comes out strange? What if I say it and nobody responds, and I just have to sit there with the words hanging in the air? By the time you've finished that process, the conversation has moved forward 2 exchanges. Your thought is no longer timely, so you don't say it. You let it go, and you tell yourself, maybe next time. What's happening psychologically is something called cognitive overload in social contexts. Your brain is doing too many things simultaneously. It's monitoring the conversation, monitoring the group's reactions, monitoring the social temperature of the room, monitoring your own internal state, generating what you want to say, and running a risk assessment on whether saying it is safe, all at the same time. And when the brain is doing that many things at once, speed becomes impossible. The processing window simply can't keep up with the pace of group conversation. For people without social anxiety, most of this monitoring happens automatically and below awareness. They don't consciously think, is it safe to speak right now? They just speak. The risk assessment is brief, largely unconscious, and rarely stops them. But for a brain wired towards social vigilance, all of that monitoring is conscious, deliberate, and energy-intensive. It takes up space. It takes up time. And by the time it's done, the moment is already over. And here's the part that goes deeper than processing speed. The silence in group conversations isn't always just about timing. For many people, it's about a very specific fear, the fear of taking up space. Not the fear of saying something wrong exactly, but a deeper, quieter discomfort with the act of inserting yourself into a shared conversation, with claiming a moment of everyone's attention, with being visible in a group in a way that feels, somehow, despite all rational evidence, presumptuous. Like you need to earn the right to be heard before you can use it. This feeling doesn't come from nowhere. It often comes from environments, past environments, sometimes very early ones, where making yourself heard wasn't always safe, where speaking up had unpredictable consequences, where the quieter you were, the smoother things went, where you learned, very early, that your presence was more acceptable when it was small. And so you made yourself small, and you got very good at it. And now, even in rooms where nobody wants you to be small, even in groups of people who would genuinely welcome what you have to say, the smallness is still the default, because it was the safe option for so long that it stopped feeling like a choice. If you recognize this, if you've ever sat in a group conversation with thoughts that never made it out, I want you to know something that's difficult to believe, but true. The silence that other people see is not what's happening inside you. Inside you, there is an entire conversation running. Observations, reactions, things you find funny or interesting or worth discussing. You are not absent from the conversation. You are overwhelmed by the gap between your interior world and the exterior one, between the thoughts that are happening and the voice that won't quite move fast enough to meet them. That gap is not a personality flaw. It is not evidence that you have nothing to contribute. It is evidence that your brain learned to treat social visibility as something that required more preparation, more certainty, more safety than the average conversation can provide. You don't have to fix this tonight. You don't have to force yourself to speak more. You don't have to perform a more extroverted version of yourself in the next group situation you find yourself in. But maybe, just once, the next time a thought arises and the inner dialogue starts, you could let it run a little shorter. Say the thing before the assessment is complete. Not because the assessment is wrong, but because the thought that started it, the one you had before all the checking began, was probably worth saying. It usually is.